The day the Earth almost lost Apollo 13. On April 11, 1970, a massive rocket lifted off from Florida, carrying 3 astronauts on a journey to the moon. The mission was called Apollo 13, and it was supposed to be another historic step in humanity's exploration of space. Inside the spacecraft were astronauts Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes. Their goal was simple: travel to the moon, land on its surface, conduct scientific experiments, and return safely to Earth. It was the third planned lunar landing mission, and by that time, NASA believed they had mastered the journey. For the first 2 days, everything seemed normal. The spacecraft traveled quietly through the darkness of space as the astronauts performed routine checks and live television broadcasts for people watching back on Earth. But then, something went terribly wrong. About 200,000 miles from Earth, Jack Swigert was asked to stir the spacecraft's oxygen tanks, a normal procedure done during missions. A loud bang shook the entire spacecraft. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Oxygen was suddenly leaking into space. Swigert calmly radioed the words that would become famous in history. "Houston, we've had a problem." The explosion had damaged one of the oxygen tanks and crippled the spacecraft's main power supply. Oxygen wasn't just for breathing. It was also needed to generate electricity. Without it, the spacecraft would slowly lose power, heat, and life support. In Houston, engineers at Mission Control immediately realized the gravity of the situation. The astronauts were hundreds of thousands of miles from Earth, drifting through space in a damaged spacecraft. Landing on the moon was no longer possible. The mission instantly changed from exploration to survival. NASA made a bold decision. The astronauts would shut down their main command module to save its remaining battery power. Instead, they would move into the lunar module, a small spacecraft designed only for landing on the moon. Now it would become their lifeboat in space. But the lunar module was never designed to support 3 astronauts for several days. The temperature inside the cabin began to drop close to freezing. Water supplies were extremely limited, and the astronauts had to ration every sip. Soon, another dangerous problem appeared. Carbon dioxide, the gas astronauts breathe out, began building up inside the cabin. The filters that removed it were running out. There were spare filters on board, but there was one huge problem. The filters in the lunar module were square. The spare filters from the command module were round. They didn't fit. If carbon dioxide levels rose too high, the astronauts would slowly suffocate. Back on Earth, engineers worked desperately to solve the problem. They had to invent a device using only materials the astronauts had on board. Things like plastic bags, cardboard, duct tape, and a flight manual. Step by step, they guided the astronauts through building a strange-looking device. The astronauts carefully assembled the improvised filter system. Amazingly, it worked. The carbon dioxide levels dropped, and the astronauts could breathe safely again. But the danger wasn't over. To get back home, Apollo 13 had to travel around the moon and use its gravity to slingshot back toward Earth. This path, called a free return trajectory, meant the spacecraft would disappear behind the moon, completely out of radio contact with Earth. For several long minutes, Mission Control heard nothing. No signals, no voices, just silence. Then finally, the signal returned. Apollo 13 was on its way home. After nearly 6 days in space, the astronauts prepared for the final and most dangerous step: re-entering Earth's atmosphere. They powered up the command module again, hoping the batteries had enough energy left. On April 17, 1970, the spacecraft plunged through the atmosphere and parachuted safely into the Pacific Ocean. Against all odds, the astronauts had survived. Apollo 13 never landed on the moon, but it became a mission of heroism and ingenuity.